I know I'm a little late to this, but the movie did just drop on Disney Plus, so I'm sure it's still somewhat topical. But I did watch Thor Love and Thunder back when it first hit theaters, and for the longest time couldn't decide how I felt about it. But after much rumination, I've come to the conclusion that it simply is not good enough. Which is unfortunate, because I loved Thor Ragnarok and was hoping to also be swept away by the follow up considering the same creative team was involved. But oh boy, did something go wrong along the way. This movie can be best described as a Chris Hemsworth vanity project. This whole venture is just him getting paid millions to frolic with his friends and family, most of whom are in this movie. For context, the movie was shot in Australia while the rest of the world was under COVID lockdown, but the land down under was still enjoying a normal life. Disney executives couldn't just fly over and supervise like they normally would. My theory is that the cast and crew decided they'd party away while occasionally remembering to shoot some scenes in between to send to the House of Mouse. Playing Thor is second nature to Hemsworth at this point, and while I know this departure from the more intense, brooding Thor of the first two installments has met with mixed responses, I don't mind his and Taika Waititi's goofier take on the character. It suits him, and you can tell he's having fun with it. It only becomes an issue when they refuse to reel it in for moments that warrant some emotional heft. There's a handful of somber moments in this movie that are undermined by immediately following up with a joke. Sif's death should feel sad and poignant. After all, she's one of Thor's oldest and dearest friends. But instead, Thor decides to crack one about how she won't be getting into Valhalla because she didn't technically die in battle while holding her dying, injured frame in his arms. There's just so much riffing and bantering in every scene to pad out the runtime, which clocks in at just under 2 hours. And even then it feels like an extended episode of a Disney Plus MCU show, because there isn't much meat to the story. It feels aimless, confusing, contrived, and incomplete. Nothing much happens or makes sense. Korg should have never been promoted to the main cast. He worked best as a comic relief administered in small doses. He serves no purpose to the story save for expositing. I think Waititi is in his hubris era, buying into his own hype and chipping away at the goodwill he's earned, with overexposure and unflattering statements.
Okay. Does that look real?
In that particular shot, no, actually.
I've seen fans claim Thor: The Dark World is a better movie than Waititi's contributions to the franchise in these past few months, even though it was ripped to shreds when it first came out. This revisionist history will not fly.
Not on my watch!
I also have no idea why the Guardians made a small cameo at the start of the film. Since they're not involved with the conflict, they could have slashed the budget in half by not paying Chris Pratt millions to Blue Steel his way through 5 minutes of screen time. And I know some of you aren't gonna like what I'm about to say, but Valkyrie felt equally pointless to the plot, which is a shame because she was such an important and interesting character in Ragnarok. There's also been talk about how this movie goes farthest in terms of LGBTQ representation in the MCU, but is it really representation if it can be easily edited out and not impact the story in any way?
That is the song that my dad sang to my other dad when they were courting. Is that because you lost your girlfriend in battle and never forgave yourself?
Alright, let's talk about Jane Foster, aka the Mighty Thor. I don't have much to say about that other than it could have used more breathing room. I wish we would have gotten to see Jane transform, her initial reaction to the transformation, and just more build-up in general. It felt like a really abrupt way to reintroduce a character that's been missing from Thor's life for a while. And while they do thankfully treat Jane's death with respect, it was pretty predictable because there was no way Natalie Portman was going to commit to being the new Thor for the unseeable future. The movie's biggest offense, however, is its waste of Christian Bale. How can you get such a seasoned actor on board and completely underutilize him? We don't even get to see Gore the God Butcher butchering any gods. We're just told he's doing so. Why do we get countless scenes of jokes that don't land instead of seeing action sequences of Gore wreaking havoc so the gravity of the situation can be conveyed? If they wanted to make a frivolous movie, they should have gone with a less intense villain, because the clashing of tones is jarring. And if Gore thinks the gods are so selfish, why does he believe kidnapping kids will lure Thor to him? And if the conceited gods who are shown in this film are anything to go by, Gore seems justified in his task, so why are we meant to root against him? Why do we find out so little about the necromancer lore? Why is Mjolnir killing Jane when it's enchanted to protect her? How come Jane ends up in Valhalla when she also didn't technically die in battle, but Sif doesn't? Why doesn't Thor just wish for Jane's cancer to disappear when they meet the Oracle? If the Oracle can bring back a girl that's been dead several months, surely it can remove a tumor from Jane's body. I keep getting frustrated with how much time was wasted trying to be funny instead of using it to explain the lore. And how can their only option to stop Gore be to solicit help from the other gods? They've established a whole universe full of superheroes. Why would Thor not reach out to them? One glaring issue that's emerging as the MCU continues to expand is the films and shows failing to explain what warrants a superhero team-up and what doesn't. And I'm gonna say what was on everyone's mind. Loki was sorely missed.
Did you miss me?
I think the reason Thor Ragnarok worked so well was that Disney already had it mapped out and knew how it was going to fit into the franchise. It was contained, yet still a piece in a bigger puzzle. Waititi just came in and added his magical touch. With Love and Thunder, however, they've given him complete creative control, all the while he's spread thin across a dozen other projects. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Love and Thunder being a standalone superhero film. If anything, we need more of them. But they should still feel coherent and focused. I shouldn't have to feel like I'm watching a 2-hour-long improv class. Okay, let me just quickly list what I did like about the movie. The 80s soundtrack was great, everyone looked hot, and the rom-com montage between Jane and Thor was a cute touch. But it's hard to appreciate any of that when 1/5 of the movie's runtime is spent milking a joke that stopped being funny a decade ago.